It's kind of crazy how the first rapper to win a Grammy, one of the highest paid actors in the world, with a squeaky clean and lovable image, went from being on top of the world to becoming one of the most hated overnight.
The Academy now investigating Will Smith for smacking Chris Rock across the face.
You know, you do not have the right to walk up on stage and smack somebody in the face because they said words.
No, I agree. I think we all agree on that.
I think that people have forgotten that before all of that, homeboy built one of the greatest entertainment careers humanity has ever seen. In today's episode of Give 'Em Their Flowers, we're talking about Will Smith. Let's get it. Boom. Before the movies, before the red carpets, before the memes, before the slap heard around the world, there was just a kid from West Philly trying to make it. Willard Carter Smith Jr. was born in 1968, and from the jump, people described him the same way. Charming, funny, quick-witted, the kind of dude that could talk his way out of almost anything. But underneath all that charisma, underneath that humor, there was this pressure. And you know what they say about pressure, right? Will grew up in a strict household. His dad run that thing with an iron grip. We're talking Joe Jackson vibes. And Will Smith himself has spoken about growing up scared and having to walk on eggshells.
And I became a pleaser. I wanted to please and placate him, because as long as Daddy-O was laughing and smiling, I believed we would be safe. My little 9-year-old brain processed Daddy-O's abusive episodes as somehow being my fault. I should have been able to keep my father satisfied. I should have been able to protect my mother.
So over time, he developed this ability to keep people smiling, laughing, entertained. It's almost like humor became survival. And low-key, once you know that, a lot about Will Smith starts making sense. See, some people become entertainers because they love the attention, they want the clout. Will always felt a little different to me. It felt like he became entertaining because he hated negativity. He was trying to spread that positive energy, you feel me? And that energy made him perfect for the era he was coming up in. Because by the mid-80s, hip-hop was exploding. Now, we can't talk about Will Smith without mentioning Jeff Towns, aka DJ Jazzy Jeff. Homeboy already had a reputation locally as this insane DJ with ridiculous scratching skills. He was doing them turntables dirty. So you got these two kids both trying to make a name for themselves in the West Philly party scene. Then one night at a house party in 1985, a chance encounter changed everything. Jeff's hype man was late, so Will Smith stepped in, grabbed the mic, and apparently the chemistry was instant. Everybody there that night said the vibes were undeniable. Like, imagine being a DJ and suddenly the perfect frontman just randomly appears out of nowhere. DJ Jazzy Jeff later went on to say that he felt a little disappointed when his actual hype man rocked up. He was like, no, I was enjoying kicking it with Will. Hey yo, here's the thing, right? A lot of rap duos back then felt like rapper featuring DJ or a DJ set with a rapper. But with Jeff and Will Smith, it felt balanced. Jeff brought the technical skills, the scratches, the production, the musicality. Will Smith brought the storytelling, the humor, the charisma, the accessibility. And together, yo, they became something different. Because at a time when a lot of hip-hop was aggressive, street-heavy, rebellious, these two came through making music that was fun, like genuinely fun. Songs about parents not understanding you, getting in trouble with girls, summer vibes, teenage life in the 80s. Even though they grew up in those same ends with the same struggles, Will Smith did what he did best. He used humor to spread positivity. They basically made hip-hop feel approachable to people who are scared of hip-hop. And that made some hip-hop purists look at them a little sideways. And yeah, some hardcore rap fans look down on them for being too clean or too commercial. But you need to understand that this wasn't a gimmick or something manufactured. It wasn't them trying to be radio friendly on purpose. This was two dudes expressing themselves and being authentic to who they were. And Will Smith especially made a conscious decision to keep his music clean, partly because of advice from his grandmother, who once found one of his rap notebooks and basically told him, "You're smarter than profanity." And whether people want to admit it or not, that decision changed everything. It made parents comfortable with him. It made him more palatable to TV and radio peeps. That squeaky clean image that he got clowned for, ironically, is the same image that helped make him a global superstar. Then came the moment that changed hip-hop forever. 1989. Parents just don't understand. The first rap Grammy ever.
Man, I don't know where to start. It's like 18 million people. First and foremost, we like to thank God. Like to thank Leor Cohen, Russell Simmons. We'd like to thank everyone at Jive, RCA. Oh man, who else, Jeff? Who else? We'd like to thank, this is the TDH posse right here. Come on, baby. Jeff.
Most of all, we'd like to thank all our family, friends, and especially you, all our fans, for making this possible. Thank you.
And I need y'all to understand how crazy this was. Hip-hop wasn't fully respected yet. The industry still looked at rap like some counterculture fad, like a little trend that was gonna pass, something unserious. And then these two dudes from West Philly kicked the door open. They put hip-hop on the main stage. And not only that, their album, He's the DJ, I'm the Rapper, became one of the defining rap albums of the era. We're talking triple platinum, massive crossover success, the first double album in hip-hop history. And that's the crazy thing, man. Before the movies, before Hollywood, Will Smith had already completed rap side quests most artists dream about completing. Now, when people think of Will Smith, the first thing they think about is the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But yo, most people don't know that this whole thing was a complete accident. See, by the late 80s, despite all the success, Will Smith was broke. And I'm talking broke, okay? The IRS had this man in a chokehold. Apparently, they took basically 70% of his income because of unpaid taxes. So now Will's sitting there, famous, recognizable, Grammy winner, and broke. Which honestly doesn't sound that crazy when you remember bro was still basically a kid. He had no financial literacy. He was having to deal with overnight success and money. And this is where destiny enters the chat. One night, Will Smith gets invited to a party and he runs into legendary producer Quincy Jones. And Quincy had this idea for a sitcom. A street-smart kid from Philly moves in with his rich relatives in Bel-Air and hijinks ensue. Simple concept, simple premise and that, but they needed the right personality to get it popping. And the second Quincy met Will Smith, he saw it immediately. The charm, the energy, the likability, the humor. There's even this legendary story where Quincy basically forced Will Smith to audition on the spot at that party. And here's the crazy thing, right? Will Smith had never acted before. No acting classes, no Hollywood training, no media training, nothing. Homeboy just walked in there of pure charisma and vibes. And somehow it worked. Because Will Smith wasn't trying to play the Fresh Prince. He was the Fresh Prince. That's why the role felt so natural. The character was basically an exaggerated version of himself. Funny, cocky, charming, a little immature, but impossible not to root for. And when the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air dropped in 1990, man, this wasn't just another sitcom. It became a cultural event. Like, you gotta understand, there are certain TV shows that don't just entertain people. They become part of people's childhood. Will Smith was able to do with the Fresh Prince what he'd done with hip-hop. The crossover was insane. Fresh Prince was one of them ones. The intro alone became iconic. Everybody knew the lyrics. Even people who'd never watched the show knew, now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down. And I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel-Air. Hey, in West Philadelphia, born and raised. Listen. Y'all sleeping on the Fresh Prince, man. Hey, yo, if you go back and watch the early episodes, you can see Will Smith mouthing along to the other actors' lines, because he spent time learning the whole script, everybody's dialogue.
3 times.
Yeah, see, my motto is, when I find a grade I like, I stick with it.
That's terrible. That's terrible. Oh, wow. Oh, that's painful to watch.
She was so ugly that Freddy Krueger used to have nightmares about her.
You can see him getting better, growing as an actor in real time. But what made the show special wasn't just the comedy or the chemistry, it was the heart. Like, yeah, it was funny seeing the slapstick comedy and, DJ Jazzy Jeff getting thrown out the crib, you know what I'm saying? Uncle Phil switching at Will and that, Carlton doing his dance. But the show also tackled racism, class differences, absent fathers, police discrimination, identity, family pressure. And because Will was naturally charismatic and goofy, the emotional moments hit even harder. Like that famous scene where Will confronts his dad and then he turns to Uncle Phil and goes,
I'm sorry, Will.
You know what? Actually, this works out better for me. The Slimmies of summer come to class wearing next to nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Will, it's all right to be angry.
Hey, why should I be mad? I'm saying at least he said goodbye this time. I just wish I hadn't wasted my money buying this stupid present.
I'm sorry. If there was something that I
Hey,
could
you know
do.
what? You ain't got to do nothing, Uncle Phil. Hey, ain't like I'm still 5 years old, Ain't like I'm gonna be sitting up every night asking my mom, when's Daddy coming home, Who needs him? Hey, he wasn't there to teach me how to shoot my first basket, but I learned, didn't I? Hey, I got pretty damn good at it too, didn't I, Uncle Phil?
You did.
Got through my first date without him, right? I learned how to drive, I learned how to shave, I learned how to fight without him. I had 14 great birthdays without him. He never even sent me a damn card. To hell with him! I ain't need him then and I don't need him now.
Will.
Now, you know what, Uncle Phil? I'm gonna get through college without him. I'm gonna get a great job without him. I'm gonna marry me a beautiful honey, and I'm gonna have me a whole bunch of kids. I'm gonna be a better father than he ever was. And I sure as hell don't need him for that, because ain't a damn thing he could ever teach me about how to love my kids. How come he don't want me, man?
Bro, even today, that scene still punches people directly in the soul. Till this day. And low-key, that moment changed how people viewed Will Smith. Because suddenly, the funny rapper dude wasn't just funny anymore. People realized, hey, wait a minute, this guy can act, okay? And for his next role, he leaned into that. So Will Smith's first movie appearance was in 1992 in a movie called Where the Day Takes You. Now, this isn't flashy, no big comedy set pieces. This was a raw, grounded drama about homeless teens surviving on the streets of Los Angeles. Completely different lane from anything people associated with him at the time. And here's the important part. This wasn't a main character Will Smith moment. He's actually just a small supporting role. But here he was, man, earning his stripes, soaking it all in. The reception, it was split. Critics actually respected the film. It had real cinema credibility. But commercially, it flopped hard. Nobody showed up to see this thing, man. Which is wild when you think about it. Because even when Will was in a critically appreciated movie, it still didn't move the needle yet. He wasn't a movie star at that point. He was still an experiment. A question Hollywood hadn't answered yet. Can this guy actually lead a film? And the answer, it hadn't been proven. Not yet. Then after that comes another key piece in the puzzle, 1993's Made in America. Now, this one is interesting because it's a totally different vibe again. He's starring alongside heavy hitters like Whoopi Goldberg and Ted Danson, and it's a mainstream Hollywood comedy. And this time, the film actually performs decently at the box office. It wasn't a flop, it made money, okay, it made some money. But the response is mixed. Critics weren't really feeling it like that. And Will Smith didn't stand out enough to make you think he had big movie star potential. In his next joint, 6 Degrees of Separation, he took an even bigger risk, playing a young gay con artist who charms his way into the lives of wealthy New Yorkers. The critical reception, it was widely positive. Will Smith didn't just hold his own alongside legends like Ian McKellen and Donna Sutherland, he also gave a standout performance. In an alternate reality, this is the path that Will Smith could have stayed on. This could have been his lane, taking on critically acclaimed, small, character-driven pieces. But that question of whether he could carry a blockbuster, whether he was a bona fide movie star, it was still unanswered. That all changed in 1995 when Bad Boys dropped. And yo, listen, Bad Boys was a gamble, a huge one, because up until this point, Will Smith was still mostly known as the funny TV guy, the clean rapper, the charming, safe dude from Fresh Prince. Nobody was looking at him like, yeah, that's the next action superstar, especially not in the 90s, because action movies back then were dominated by these larger-than-life action monsters who'd made their way from, the 80s. We're talking Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Bruce Willis, Steven Seagal, Van Damme and them. It was a certain kind of vibe, right? Then here comes Will Smith. And he's not the black sidekick, he's the guy, and his partner is comedy legend Martin Lawrence. The movie didn't work despite these two, it worked because of them. Because on paper, it shouldn't have worked. Director Michael Bay wasn't really feeling the dialogue in the script, so he let him do a lot of improvising. So in the midst of Michael Bay's signature explosions, slow motion, chaos, fire, you have characters who sound authentic with off-the-charts chemistry. Bro, these two together, fire. It felt natural, messy, funny, like two actual homies roasting each other while dodging bullets. And this right here is where Will Smith unlocked something that would define his entire movie career. He figured out how to blend action hero energy with humor, with effortless charisma. Now, critically, the reviews were mixed. Some critics looked at Bad Boys like, hey, it's too loud, too much action, too much chaos. But audiences, hey, we love that joint, man. It opened up a #1 at the box office, and it brought in major bank domestically and internationally. This was the first time people looked at Will Smith as a huge movie star, as the reason people were going to the cinema to see the movie. This was something director Roland Emmerich understood. When he cooked up the idea for a big budget alien invasion movie, there's only one person he could think of to play the lead. And yo, shout out to Roland Emmerich and his producer Dean Devlin, because they had to fight to get Will Smith. The studio execs thought it was too risky to cast an African American in the lead. Thankfully, Homeboy made the gamble pay off, because when Independence Day dropped in 1996, it didn't just succeed, it dominated. Hey yo, I really need y'all to understand what this movie felt like at the time. This wasn't just, oh cool, another summer blockbuster. Nah, Independence Day felt like an event. The marketing was everywhere. The White House explosion trailer had people losing their minds. The scale felt massive. The effects looked revolutionary. And right in the middle of all that chaos was Will Smith.
Welcome to Earth.
Iconic. And the movie became an absolute monster at the box office. Worldwide smash. One of the biggest movies ever at the time. Will Smith officially becomes an international superstar. Not a TV superstar. Not a black superstar. A global superstar. And honestly, it matters because in the 90s, Hollywood still had this outdated belief that international audiences wouldn't support black actors as blockbuster leads. Independence Day came along and absolutely smashed that narrative. And after this, Will Smith isn't chasing Hollywood anymore. Hollywood is chasing him. Every studio wants him. Every franchise wants a piece of him. Every poster wants his face front and center. And somehow, while becoming one of the biggest movie stars on earth, the man also decides, you know what, let me go back to music real quick. Because in 1997, Will Smith drops Big Willie Style. See, I've lived in London for too long, man, because in the UK, Big Willie, it's got a different meaning to it, okay? But yo, what's great about this album is the fact that Will Smith didn't do what most rappers in his position would have done. See, at this point, some of the folks who thought he was corny and soft, they'd seen him in Bad Boys. They'd seen an edgy, sweary, street smart version of him as Mike Lowry. And there's people who hadn't even heard his earlier joints from the 80s. So Homeboy could have easily leaned into that. Because most rappers at that point, they would have tried to reinvent themselves. Go darker, go grittier, act tougher. But Will? Nah. Homeboy doubled down on being himself. Fun, clean, positive, flashy, feel good. The album felt like pure dopamine. And whether hip-hop purists want to admit it or not, these songs became part of pop culture history. Getting jiggy with it, na 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 na. Getting jiggy with it, na 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 na. Listen, Miami, I'm going to Miami. Yo, just the two of us, man. These weren't little records. These were global anthems. Songs your auntie knew, songs kids knew, songs that played at parties, school discos, everywhere. And here's the crazy thing: a lot of people clown Will Smith now for being corny, but back then, that positivity, that feel-good vibe was his superpower. While everybody else was trying to look hard, Will mastered something way harder. He made optimism cool. And commercially, the numbers were insane. Multi-platinum success, hit singles everywhere, another Grammy win. So now think about where this man is by the late 90s. Successful rapper, sitcom icon, blockbuster movie star, chart-topping solo artist. And at this point, Will Smith isn't just famous anymore. He's become something bigger, a brand, a symbol of success itself, the American dream embodied. And as if it couldn't get any bigger, in 1997, he starred alongside Tommy Lee Jones in Men in Black. And yo, this movie right here, this is where Will Smith stops feeling like a celebrity and starts feeling like a force of nature. Because think about how insane this run already is, right? Bad Boys, Independence Day, and then boom. Now what made Men in Black genius was the contrast between Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith. The chemistry was perfect. And once again, Will Smith does what Will Smith does. He takes something that could have felt cold and serious and injects pure humor and personality into it. The suits, the glasses, the music, the swag, the one-liners. This movie had style, and Will Smith was the heartbeat of all of it. And this is another thing people forget. Will Smith wasn't just starring in these movies, he was helping market them too. Because for Men in Black, he also drops the soundtrack single, Men in Black. And boom, another hit. Critics liked it more than Bad Boys. Audiences loved it. The soundtrack was crazy. And now, by the late 90s, Will Smith has become something almost unheard of. A rapper, a sitcom legend, a blockbuster action star, and a family-friendly global pop icon, all at the same time. And before anybody could even process how massive Men in Black was, Will Smith came right back in 1998 with another one, Enemy of the State. Now, this movie is important for a completely different reason, because up until now, a lot of Will Smith's success was tied to comedy, charisma, the spectacle of it all, but Enemy of the State showed something else entirely. It was Will Smith in his grown-up bag. The movie had tension, paranoia, it was serious. And yo, here's how ahead of its time this movie was, man. It came out before social media, before phones, before people were putting tapes over over their webcams. But the whole premise was basically, hey, what if the government could track everything you do? At the time, it felt exaggerated, the stuff of conspiracy theories. Now, it's like, hey, that aged brilliantly. And Will Smith plays just like a regular lawyer whose life gets completely destroyed after accidentally receiving evidence tied to a political assassination. 1 minute bro is living a normal life, the next minute he's being watched, chased, framed, recorded, hunted. Everything spirals. And this is where Will Smith really starts evolving as an actor. Because in Bad Boys and Independence Day, he's the loudest, coolest dude in the room. But in Enemy of the State, he feels vulnerable, scared, confused, desperate. It proved he could carry a thriller without relying entirely on jokes and swag. And another smart move, pairing him up with Gene Hackman. He'd already showed us he could do it with Tommy Lee Jones. In this joint, he proves it wasn't a fluke. You got this legendary old school acting heavyweight next to Will Smith, the rising king of modern Hollywood, and the contrast works beautifully. Now, commercially, another hit. Seriously, this run is getting ridiculous at this point, because think about what audiences are seeing in real time. They're seeing action comedy Will Smith, sci-fi blockbuster Will Smith, rapper Will Smith, dramatic thriller Will Smith. The man is genre hopping like it's nothing. And the wildest part, he's making it look easy. By the late 90s, Will Smith wasn't just a movie star anymore. He was becoming the safest bet in entertainment. If studios put Will Smith on the poster, people gonna show up. Simple as that. And honestly, very few actors in history have ever had a run this crazy. But this is when he made his first misstep. This is when he made his first little blunder. The Wachowskis were cooking up The Matrix, and they wanted Will Smith to star as Neo. He heard their pitch, checked out the script, and was like, nah, this ain't for me. Nah, there's this other joint that's a better fit for me. In 1999, Will teams up with Barry Sonnenfeld for Wild Wild West. And listen, man, on paper, I get it. This looked like a banger. A massive sci-fi western blockbuster. Big budget, big effects, big star, big concept. They were trying to reinvent the Western, right? Make it futuristic, make it wild, make it spectacle heavy. And Will Smith, he's right at the center of it as Agent Jim West. Charismatic, funny, stylish, doing what he always does. But here's the thing, the movie wasn't it. It wasn't. Critics tore it apart. People didn't fully connect with the tone. The CGI wasn't CGIing. And even though the ambition was huge, it felt like something was off about the movie. The only good thing about it was the song that came out of it, Wild Wild West. It's catchy. It's a catchy song. But instead of this slowing him down, it pushes him somewhere even more powerful. Because while Wild Wild West is happening, Will is also in the studio cooking something completely different. His next album, Willennium. And this one feels like a statement, because after dominating movies, after becoming a global superstar, he's basically going, nah, I'm still a rapper too. And just like before, he doesn't reinvent himself into something darker or grittier. He doubles down on what made him Will Smith. Fun, clean, confident. And the biggest single was the joint Will 2K. It's basically him stepping into the new millennium like, yeah, I'm still here and I'm still winning. And right after the chaos and spectacle of Wild Wild West, Will Smith shifts into something completely different. A film that's quiet, slower, more prestige, The Legend of Bagger Vance. Now on paper, this looked like a serious award season contender, directed by Robert Redford, starring alongside heavyweights like Matt Damon and Charlize Theron. This wasn't popcorn cinema. This was we are going for the Oscars cinema. And Will Smith? He plays Bagger Vance, a mysterious mentor figure who appears almost out of nowhere to guide a broken gopher back to his game. Soft-spoken, wise, calm, almost otherworldly. And this is where things get complicated, because while the film is beautifully shot, the reception super mixed. Some people saw it as poetic, artistic. Others saw it as shallow. Because underneath the inspirational sports story, there's a much bigger conversation that the film never really addresses. It never really addresses its place in time and history and what was going on with race and power dynamics in the American South. Instead of directly engaging with those realities, the film wraps them in metaphor, mysticism, spiritual symbolism, and that's where the criticism starts to hit harder. One of the loudest voices in the conversation was Spike Lee. He publicly criticized the film for leaning into what's often called the magical Negro trope. That's basically a character who exists mainly to guide a white protagonist, heal their emotional struggles, appear wise or mystical without having a fully grounded interior life of their own. And Will Smith, he gets dragged into that discourse whether he wants it or not. The culture is beginning to side-eye him a little bit. Some people in the barbershop are in agreement with Spike Lee. They're bringing up dark-skinned Aunt Viv from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and how she left the show because of Will Smith. People are beginning to question whether his nice guy persona is just a way for him to appeal to white folk. But then Homeboy does something dope. He takes on a role that has the culture going, okay. Will Smith taking on the role of Muhammad Ali was a brazy move because Ali isn't just a boxer, right? He's a political symbol, a global icon of resistance and charisma, one of the most documented humans in modern history. So when Will Smith first gets cast, the question isn't, can he act? We know he can act. The question is, can he do Muhammad Ali justice? And to prepare for this role, my man goes all in. Physical transformation, boxing training, voice work, movement study, watching tapes of Ali's rhythm, humor, confidence. Because Ali didn't just fight, right? He performed, he danced, he talked, he entertained. He got into people's heads before he even threw a punch. He floated like a butterfly and stung like a bee, okay? And that's actually where Will Smith connected with the character on a deeper level. Because beneath all the fame, charisma, and humor, he understands survival. He understands performance as survival. And when the movie dropped, the reaction it's complicated at first because it's not a clean, feel-good blockbuster. It's slow, heavy, intense, almost spiritual in places. But something starts happening over time. People begin to respect it, not just as a movie, but as a performance. Because Will Smith didn't just disappear into Ali, he channels him. And suddenly, the same guy who was once the fun Fresh Prince rapper turned movie star is being mentioned in the same breath as serious, dramatic actors. This is the moment the conversation around Will Smith shifts again. Not just box office star, not just global entertainer, but Oscar-worthy actor. And even though he doesn't take home the Oscar, the nomination itself changes his positioning in Hollywood permanently. Because now he's proven something different. He can carry weight. He can carry history. He can carry pain. He can represent the culture. And after years of being seen as the safe, charismatic crossover star, Will steps out of Ali with something he never had before: critical legitimacy at the highest level. Now here's the crazy thing, man. Right after proving he could carry this deep, layered, critically respected performance in Ali, Will Smith does something that honestly defines his entire career philosophy. He doesn't stay in the prestige lane. He doesn't suddenly become one of those actors who only wants to do important cinema, method acting. Nah, Homeboy spins right back around and goes, cool, let me go fight aliens again. Because in 2002, we get Men in Black 2. And this movie is fascinating in the context of Will Smith's career. Because at this point, he's already conquered music, sitcom television, action blockbusters, sci-fi, prestige drama. He has nothing left to prove, which means Men in Black 2 isn't really about proving himself anymore. It's about maintaining the empire. And whether people think the sequel is better than the first one or not, It doesn't matter. The important thing is this. The brand of Will Smith was now so strong, people showed up regardless. That's star power. Real star power. Real star power. Because by the early 2000s, Will Smith had become one of the few actors on earth where audiences trusted the experience. You saw Will Smith on a poster and thought, I bet this is probably going to be entertaining. And Men in Black 2 leans heavily into everything people already loved about him. The movie understood the assignment. And commercially, another massive success, because at this point the Will Smith machine is basically unstoppable. And in that same year, Homeboy drops the album Born to Reign, which debuted at number 13 on the Billboard charts. And the next year he gives us another sequel, Bad Boys 2. Hey yo, listen, this movie takes everything about the original and cranks it up to 100. We're talking about pure early 2000s excess. Everything about it is bigger than the first one. More explosions, more action, more jokes, more chaos, you know what I'm saying? And by this point, Will Smith has fully mastered his movie star image. Because Mike Lowry isn't just a character anymore. He's basically the ultimate fantasy version of Will Smith's public image. And yo, the chemistry between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, still fire. Critics hated this movie, like really hated it. They were like, it's too long, it's too loud, too violent, too ridiculous. And honestly, they weren't completely wrong. This movie is unhinged, but audiences, man, audience didn't care, man. It's what they wanted. And commercially, another banger. And then in 2004, Will Smith steps into another role that quietly becomes way more influential than people realized at the time. I, Robot. Now, first things first, this movie had a lot working against it before it even dropped, because the title alone came with pressure. We're talking about material connected to Isaac Asimov, one of the most respected science fiction writers ever. So immediately, sci-fi fans are nervous. They're going, hey, don't turn this into another brainless action movie, Hollywood. And honestly, the trailer kind of made it look like that. Big explosions, robot fights, Will Smith one-liners, slow motion running. But once the movie actually comes out, people start realizing there's something more going on underneath the surface. Because yeah, at face value, it's an action thriller. But underneath, the movie's asking some really interesting questions about artificial intelligence, free will, surveillance, automation, trusting technology too much. And again, this is years before AI became the massive global conversation it is now. Which makes rewatching the movie today feel kind of wild, because some of the stuff that felt futuristic in 2004 now feels like, hey, wait up, hold on. And Will Smith, he smashes it. He's cynical, traumatized, suspicious, and a little bitter. The jokes are still there. The swagger is still there. But now there's pain underneath it. And honestly, that's what makes this phase of Will Smith's career so interesting. He figured out how to evolve without losing what made him famous. A lot of actors struggle with that. They either become too serious and lose their charm, or they stay stuck doing the exact same thing forever. Will somehow keeps both. He's still funny, still charismatic, still cool, but now there's vulnerability mixed in. And commercially, you already know, another massive hit. At this point, it feels like Will Smith physically cannot stop making successful movies. And low-key, iRobot also continues something really important about his career. Will Smith keeps putting black leads at the center of giant sci-fi blockbusters. That wasn't normal back then, and it was different, man. People weren't talking about, oh, it's woke, they only cast him because it's black. Nah, he made it look effortless. People forget how groundbreaking that actually was. People were too busy being entertained to call it woke. The Fresh Prince from West Philly has officially become one of the most powerful stars on the planet. In the middle of all these massive action movies, sci-fi blockbusters, and prestige performances, Will Smith also casually becomes a cartoon fish. Because later in 2004, he stars in Shark Tale. And yo, this joint was everywhere. And what makes Shark Tale interesting in the context of Will Smith's career is that it shows just how big his personality had become. Because Oscar, the fish Will Smith voices, is basically animated Will Smith. And look, critically, Shark Tale got mixed reviews. Mixed reviews is putting it lightly. A lot of people compared it to Finding Nemo, and of course, it's not even a competition. Pixar was on another level in terms of storytelling, animation, and emotional depth, but commercially, another hit. At this point, Will Smith was woven into pop culture. We're talking movies, TV, music, animation, radio, fashion, memes before memes even existed. He wasn't just participating in culture anymore. For a while there, Homeboy was the culture. And then in 2005, Will Smith hits the world with a double whammy, because apparently dominating one industry at a time wasn't enough for this man. Because first, he drops Lost and Found. Now this album is really interesting when you look back at it, because compared to Big Willie Style and Willennium, this project feels more reflective, more grown. The fun is still there, the charisma is still there, but now there's also this feeling that Will Smith is becoming more self-aware, more conscious of the fame, the criticism, the pressure, the expectations. And the big single off the album, Switch. Bro, that song was everywhere. And commercially, the album is another success. We're talking Billboard busting, hit records, heavy rotation. And in that same year, he gives us something that might low-key be one of the smartest movies of his entire career, Hitch. Now, this movie right here, this is where Will Smith weaponizes charm at a maximum level. And the premise is genius. Will Smith plays Alex Hitch Hitchens, basically a professional dating coach helping awkward men navigate relationships, which honestly feels like the perfect Will Smith role, because his entire public image at this point is confident, smooth, funny, emotionally intelligent, likable. He feels like the human version of, "Alright bro, let me help you out." And what makes Hitch work so well is that underneath the comedy and romance, it's actually about vulnerability, about fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, fear of not being enough. And that emotional honesty gives the movie heart. And audiences absolutely ate it up, because Hitch becomes the biggest romantic comedy of 2005. Not one of the biggest, the biggest, which is insane when you think about it. Most action stars can't pivot into romance. Most rappers can't lead rom-coms. Most comedy actors don't feel believable as smooth romantic leads. Will Smith somehow does all of it. And this is the point where his career starts feeling almost unreal, untouchable, because there's no obvious weakness anymore. He can make you laugh, he can carry action, do drama, make hit music, lead sci-fi, headline romantic comedies. At this point, Will Smith isn't just versatile, he's becoming almost too successful. And that level of universal approval comes with a pressure most people can't even begin to imagine. And then, right at the height of all this success, all the blockbuster movies, all the hit records, all the polished superstar energy, Will Smith gives us what might honestly be the most human performance of his entire career, The Pursuit of Happyness. And yo, this movie hit different. Because for once, Will Smith isn't playing the coolest guy in the room, the smooth hero, the charming superstar. Nah, here he's struggling. Financially, emotionally, mentally. He plays Chris Gardner, a real-life man trying to survive homelessness while raising his young son, played by his real-life son, Jada. And honestly, the role feels personal. Because remember earlier in the story, man, my man dealt with IRS problems. He grew up broke. He had fear of failure, pressure to maintain success. It's like those anxieties underneath Will Smith's public image suddenly got channeled into this one performance. And what makes this movie work so well is that Will Smith doesn't overplay the sadness. He keeps Chris Gardner dignified, quiet, determined, holding it together even when life is crushing him. And that restraint, it makes the emotional moments hit even harder. because this isn't just a movie about poverty. It's about pressure, about masculinity, about fatherhood, about trying to protect your child when you feel broken inside. And low key, that's why so many people connected with it. And yo, whoever decided to cast his real life son in this deserves a raise or something. Cause bro, the chemistry feels real. And I guess it feels real because it is real. Yo, you believe every interaction, every protective moment, every emotional breakdown, especially that scene. Yeah, you know the one, the public bathroom scene. Man, that scene alone broke a lot of men watching that movie, man. And this is where the conversation around Will Smith changes again. Because now, nobody can deny the dramatic ability anymore. Critics praise the performance. Audiences connected deeply with it. And yo, our boy got another Oscar nomination. And after making the world cry with Pursuit of Happyness, Will Smith does something absolutely ridiculous in 2007. He decides to carry an entire blockbuster basically by himself. Because in 2007, we get I Am Legend. And yo, this movie was different. Not just for Will Smith, but for cinema in general. Because think about how risky this actually was, right? For huge stretches of the movie, it's literally just Will Smith, a dog, and an empty city. That's it. If the audience doesn't connect with Will Smith, the whole movie falls apart. And that's what makes this performance so impressive, because Will Smith manages to make loneliness feel entertaining. You feel the isolation, the grief, the desperation, the slow mental breakdown, while he's still somehow keeping you emotionally invested every step of the way. And low-key, this might be one of the most vulnerable performances of his career. And the loneliness in this movie feels real on some Tom Hanks Castaway levels, which makes the emotional moments hit even harder, especially the scenes with Sam. Bro, if you know, you know. Entire generations got emotionally violated by that dog scene. And commercially, absolute insanity, man. The movie opens huge. One of the biggest openings ever at the time for a non-sequel. And then in 2008, instead of playing another polished hero, Will Smith does something really interesting. He plays a superhero that nobody actually likes. Because in 2008, we get Hancock. And yo, the concept was way ahead of its time. Nowadays, we're used to it, right? We're used to flawed superheroes, anti-heroes, messy savior characters. But back then, most heroes were still presented as noble, clean, inspirational, universally loved. Then Hancock rocks up drunk, angry, and emotionally damaged. And honestly, this role feels low-key symbolic when you look back at Will Smith's career. Because for years, his entire public image had been built around likability, positivity, perfection, charm. And now he's suddenly playing a man with anger issues, emotional baggage, public backlash, people actively hating him. Yo, it's like my man had a crystal ball or something. And yo, what makes Hancock work so well is that Will Smith leans into the messiness. He's rude, awkward, self-destructive, lonely. Underneath all the jokes and destruction, this is actually a movie about depression and isolation, because Hancock isn't just hated by the public, he hates himself. And that emotional layer gives the movie something deeper underneath all the explosions. Now, the movie itself, people are kind of split on it, especially the second half, because without spoiling too much, the story suddenly shifts into a very different direction. A direction that some people loved and others thought got way too weird. And commercially, another banger. Of course it was. And then, right after playing a messy alcoholic superhero in Hancock, Will Smith pivots again. But this time, not into action, not into comedy. Nah, he goes full emotional devastation. Because later in 2008, we get 7 pounds. And yo, This movie's a lot. This is Will Smith at his most emotionally heavy. The whole movie feels haunted and deep, like there's grief sitting in every single scene. And what's interesting is when the movie first released, critics were super divided on it. Some people thought it was emotionally manipulative. Others thought it was, overly sentimental. A lot of reviewers didn't fully connect with it at all. But audiences, completely different story. Because emotionally, this movie landed hard for a lot of people. Especially people dealing with regret, guilt, grief, depression, redemption. And honestly, this might be one of the bravest choices Will Smith ever made as a movie star. Because 7 Pounds asks audiences to sit with discomfort. There's no flashy spectacle to hide behind, no franchise energy, no giant action sequences, just pain, loss, and somebody desperately trying to find redemption. And Will Smith's performance? Super restrained, quiet, heavy, internal. You can literally feel the guilt radiating off this man the whole movie. And by the end of the 2000s, Will Smith isn't just building a career anymore. Homeboy is building a dynasty. Because at this point, it's not just Will dominating entertainment anymore. The entire Smith family starts becoming a pop cultural force. And honestly, this era is fascinating, man, because you can literally see Will trying to create something bigger than individual success. Not just, I want to be a star, but I want to build an empire. And alongside his wife Jada Pinkett Smith, Will starts producing more projects behind the scenes too. Movies, TV, family branding, career development. Everything starts feeling intentional, strategic. Like the Smith family is slowly turning into Hollywood royalty in real time. And then in 2010, the next generation enters the chat in a big way. Because out of nowhere, Willow Smith drops Whip My Hair. Bro, this joint was everywhere. Schools, radio, YouTube, TV, talent shows. Every kid on earth was violently rotating their necks. And what's crazy is Willow wasn't just riding off her parents' fame. People genuinely connected with the song's energy because underneath the catchy hook, it was basically a confidence anthem about self-expression, about being yourself, not caring what people think. And honestly, that message fits the whole Smith family brand perfectly. And commercially, huge success. Platinum records, international chart success, huge cultural moment. Suddenly the Smith family doesn't just have a movie star dad and an actress mother. Now they got a child pop star too. But they weren't done. Because that same year, Jaden Smith steps into the spotlight with The Karate Kid. And yo, people are sleeping on this movie, man. Because it could have gone very wrong, okay? It could have gone horribly wrong. Because remaking a beloved classic, that's dangerous territory. People were skeptical from day one. They were like, hey, ain't no way you're replacing Mr. Miyagi and Danielson. What you talking about? People were skeptical. Plus, there was already whispers of, oh, this is just Will Smith using Hollywood to push his kids. But then the movie drops. And Jaden actually delivers. The training scenes, solid. The emotional moments, fire. The chemistry with Jackie Chan, yo. And commercially, it was a smash. One of the biggest hits of Jaden's career, which isn't saying much, but it was one of the biggest hits in general. Just huge worldwide success, massive international audience. And remember, this is happening while Will Smith himself is still one of the biggest stars alive. So now the perception of the Smith family, it starts changing. They are no longer just a celebrity family. They become a Hollywood power family. Music, movies, producing, fashion, talk shows, global fame, everything connected. But low-key, this is also where public opinion around Will Smith and them starts becoming a little bit complicated. Because the bigger the empire gets, the more people start questioning authenticity, control, image management, privilege, nepotism. And for the first time in years, there's a small shift happening culturally. Not hate, Not backlash, not yet, but the beginning of something else. People starting to look at the perfect Smith family image with a little more skepticism. And that pressure is about to grow a lot heavier in the next phase of the story. But right when public perception around the Smith family is starting to get, a little more complicated, as we said, Will Smith reminds everybody something very important. It's like, listen, y'all can debate me all you want, but when it's blockbuster time, I still got this. Because in 2012, after 10 years away from the franchise, Will Smith returns with Men in Black 3. And honestly, this movie had no business being as good as it was. Because behind the scenes, the production was apparently kind of chaotic. There were script rewrites, delays. People genuinely thought, hey, do we need another Men in Black movie? You know what I'm saying? People were like, hey, this might be the one where the magic finally runs out. But then the movie drops. And somehow, it works. It exceeds everybody's expectations. And what makes Men in Black 3 special is that it doesn't just rely on nostalgia. It actually gives the franchise heart again. Because underneath all the alien jokes and sci-fi madness, the movie's really about friendship, growing up, loyalty, loss, father figure, sacrifice. And low-key, the whole thing hits harder because Will Smith himself is older now. You can feel the maturity in his performance. Agent J isn't just a loud rookie anymore. He's experienced, more grounded, still funny, but carrying more emotional depth underneath the humor. And the chemistry with Josh Brolin playing a younger version of Tommy Lee Jones, it's crazy. This man was Tommy Lee Jones. And once again, Will Smith proves something that very few movie stars can do. He disappears from a franchise for a decade and then comes back and makes audiences feel instantly at home again. And commercially, another hit, of course, because at this point, even after ups and downs, Will Smith is still one of the safest bets in Hollywood. And honestly, that consistency is historic. And then comes the project that changes the conversation around Will Smith for the first time in a really major way. After Earth. And yo, on paper, this should have worked. Sci-fi blockbuster, huge budget, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Will Smith starring alongside his son Jaden Smith. Yo, it should have worked. And emotionally, you can understand why Will wanted to make this movie. Because after the Pursuit of Happyness, the Karate Kid, building a Smith family brand, it makes sense. It feels like he genuinely wanted to create this big generational passing of the torch moment. The movie is literally about fathers and sons, fear, legacy, growth, trust, and low-key, the intentions feel sincere. But yo, when the movie dropped, the reaction was brutal. Critics cooked this movie. People said the dialogue felt stiff, the story felt flat, the pacing dragged, the performances felt awkward, and unfortunately, a lot of the criticism gets directed towards Jaden. But here's where things get uncomfortable, because the backlash wasn't just about the movie. This is the point where public opinion about the Smith family starts shifting hard. All them whispers about nepotism, overexposure, image management, Hollywood privilege, they became louder, okay? And Will Smith himself catches criticism too, because people start looking at the movie like, is this a passion project or just one giant vanity project? And honestly, for the first time in years, Will Smith's instincts as a producer and star didn't connect with the culture. Commercially, the movie made some money, globally, but compared to the budget and expectations, it's considered a failure, a disappointment. And culturally, it lands even worse, because for the first time in his entire career, people aren't just questioning a movie, they're questioning Will Smith himself. Because up until now, even when he had misses, people still loved him, people still trusted him, people still rooted for him. After Earth feels different. It feels like the beginning of the audience emotionally disconnecting from the perfect Will Smith brand. And honestly, I think this is where the pressure of maintaining perfectionism starts becoming impossible to hide. Because remember, Will Smith spent decades building this image. Successful, charismatic, inspirational, flawless family man, global superstar, perfect dad, perfect husband. But humans aren't built to sustain that forever. Eventually, the cracks start showing. And from this point onward, Will Smith's career starts entering a much more complicated phase. Because after the whole After Earth situation, you can feel Will Smith entering his experimental phase, because now the expectations are different. The audience is changing. Superhero movies are taking over. Internet culture is evolving. People don't worship celebrities the way they used to. Social media is becoming brutal. And for the first time in a long time, Will Smith isn't automatically the coolest guy in the room anymore. So what does he do? He experiments a lot. First up, Focus. Now, Focus is low-key underrated, man. This movie feels like old-school movie star Will Smith. Smooth, stylish, charismatic, fast-talking, it looks expensive. And alongside Margot Robbie, the chemistry is fire. The movie itself doesn't become this big cultural phenomenon though, but it reminds the people who did see it, oh yeah, Will Smith can still do effortless charm better than anybody else. And honestly, that's important after the darker cloud hanging over After Earth. Then later the same year, Will Smith pivots hard again with Concussion. Now this is classic serious awards season Will, based on the real story of Dr. Bennett Omalu, the man who exposed the dangers of brain trauma in American football. And Will is clearly acting here. Emotional speeches, prestige drama, but the accent is a little bit off. He did get clowned for the accent, because bro, what are you doing? And the response overall kind of muted. A lot of people don't even know this movie exists. And that's the thing, right? Will Smith is still good, but culturally, he just wasn't dominating the way he used to. And then comes 2016, and Suicide Squad drops. Now listen, this movie is a guilty pleasure of mine. I will defend it till the ends of the earth. But even I have to admit that it's a little messy. Critics tore it apart. The editing felt chaotic, the tone was all over the place. They said, hey, the story feels stitched together with duct tape and energy drinks. But the one thing that almost everyone agreed on was that Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn and Will Smith as Deadshot, they were fire. Because what Will does is he brings something human to the role, okay? Deadshot is really just a deeply damaged father trying to hold on to some piece of his humanity. And once again, Will Smith naturally connects to that emotional core. And commercially, the movie makes crazy money. Then later the same year, we get Collateral Beauty. And this movie got destroyed by critics. Like, they absolutely cooked it. But again, you can see what Will Smith is trying to do. He's chasing emotion, healing, grief, meaning. The movie's about loss, about pain, about reconnecting with life after tragedy. And honestly, you can tell Will Smith is genuinely drawn to stories about emotional suffering during this phase of his career. But audiences and critics just weren't fully connecting with these prestige emotional swings anymore. And that disconnect, it just keeps growing. Then comes one of the strangest career pivots of his entire life, Bright. Bro, this movie feels like somebody generated a movie premise in a fever dream. Like, okay, so what if cops, fantasy creatures, racism, gang warfare, magic wands all happen at once? Critics hated it, like really hated it. But here's the twist. On Netflix, the movie performs huge. A lot of people see it, but most of them also hated it. And this becomes another important shift though, because now Will Smith is adapting to streaming culture, internet culture, changing entertainment habits. The old Hollywood system is evolving and Will is trying to evolve with it. And then in 2019, Disney announces a live-action remake of Aladdin, and they reveal Will Smith will play the Genie. The internet immediately loses its mind. People were not convinced because replacing Robin Williams as the Genie? That's impossible. The memes were cooking Will Smith. The first look CGI got roasted. Everybody was skeptical. But then the movie actually drops, and surprise, surprise, Will Smith wins people over again. He's the best thing about the movie because instead of trying to copy Robin Williams, he makes the Genie his own thing. More musical, more charismatic, more playful, more Will Smith. And commercially, another banger. Over $1 billion worldwide, which is insane because at this point, we're talking about a man who's been dominating entertainment across the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and now the late 2010s. And honestly, Aladdin feels like one final reminder of Will Smith's greatest strength. No matter how trends changed, no matter how culture shifted, no matter how many people doubted him, the man knew how to connect with audiences. But behind the scenes, the pressure of maintaining the Will Smith image was becoming heavier than ever. And before we get to the internet absolutely dissecting Will Smith's personal life in 2020, there's one more interesting stretch in his career we gotta talk about. Because even in the late 2010s, Will Smith is still experimenting, still trying new things, still chasing blockbuster relevance. Because at this point, the industry has changed massively. The 90s movie star era, basically gone. Now it's franchises, IPs, cinematic universes, algorithms, meme culture. People have low attention spans, and Will Smith is trying to figure out where he fits in this new world. Which brings us to Gemini Man. And this movie is such a weirdly symbolic Will Smith project because the whole premise is older Will Smith fighting a younger version of himself. Like, bro, the metaphor is basically punching you directly in the face. A younger, faster, stronger version versus an older man struggling with legacy, identity, and time. And honestly, even though the movie itself got mixed reviews, the central idea is fascinating, especially in the context of Will Smith's career. Because by now, people are comparing current Will Smith to Fresh Prince Will Smith, Bad Boys Will Smith, Men in Black Will Smith, 90s untouchable superstar Will Smith. But unfortunately, man, the movie just didn't connect commercially, critically, or with the audience. But then that same year, Will pivots again into animation with Spies in Disguise. And honestly, this is friendly, classic Will Smith territory, okay? Funny, charismatic, cool spy energy. Even as an animated pigeon, Homeboy still somehow sounds smooth. And this is important because even after all these years, Will Smith still has that cross-generational appeal. Parents know him, kids know him, grandparents know him. That level of longevity is rare. But then 2020 happens and everything changes. Now, first, let's talk about the positive. Because after years away, Bad Boys for Life drops. And honestly, the movie surprised a lot of people. Because by this point, people were wondering, can Bad Boys still work in modern times? And somehow, it does. The chemistry between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence is still there. The humor still works. The action still bangs. The nostalgia hits perfectly. And commercially, massive success. One of the biggest movies of 2020 before the world shut down. And for a brief moment, it feels like Will Smith might be having another comeback era. Like the culture is warming back up to him again. And then the entanglement happens. And bro, the internet absolutely lost its mind because during an episode of Red Table Talk, Jada Pinkett Smith invites Will Smith onto the show and she discusses her relationship with August Alsina, an R&B singer who was young enough to be her son. In fact, he was actually friends with her son Jaden. Instead of calling it an affair, she calls it an entanglement. And the phrase entanglement instantly enters internet history. But what makes this situation hit so differently was seeing Will's face during the conversation. People saw pain, discomfort, exhaustion, embarrassment, and suddenly that image that he'd built up for years, that untouchable Fresh Prince image, cracked publicly in a way we'd never really seen before. And then the internet starts digging deeper. People revisit old interviews, old clips, old stories. The conversation around Tupac Shakur starts resurfacing heavily. People find clips of Jada talking about how deeply she loved Tupac. Will Smith talking about feeling insecure and inferior around Pac. Even little comments like Willow Smith saying Tupac was her favorite rapper. Suddenly people aren't looking at Will Smith as the coolest guy alive, the untouchable movie star. They're looking at him with sympathy. Like, yo, this dude is hurting. But because it's the internet, that sympathy also gets mixed in with jokes, cruelty, memes, masculinity discourse. People start calling him weak, soft, and honestly, it becomes one of the biggest examples of public humiliation culture in modern celebrity history. Because for decades, Will Smith carefully built this image of confidence. And now, the internet is tearing that image apart in real time, piece by piece. And low-key, I think this period broke something emotionally in Will Smith, something that the public didn't fully understand at the time. Because remember, this is a man who spent his whole life trying to make people happy, be lovable, keep the peace, maintain the smile, and suddenly the whole world is laughing at him instead of with him. And that pressure, it's about to explode in the worst possible way. And then, after years of internet jokes, memes, public embarrassment, people questioning his masculinity, people turning his pain into entertainment, Will Smith gives one of the best performances of his entire career, King Richard. And honestly, this role feels perfect for where he was emotionally at this point in his life. Because in King Richard, he's not playing someone cool. He's not playing a superhero or a smooth-talking ladies' man. Nah, he's playing a father, a deeply flawed, deeply determined, deeply human father. And Will Smith absolutely disappears into this character. The voice, the posture, the stubbornness, the vulnerability. You can feel how badly Richard Williams wants to protect his family and force the world to see the greatness of his daughters. And low-key, there's something almost autobiographical about it. Because by this stage in his real life, Will Smith is also a father who spent years trying to build a legacy, create generational success, keep his family together under insane public scrutiny. And I think audiences felt that emotional honesty. Everybody who saw it loved it. Critics loved the performances. Audiences connected with it. Award buzz everywhere. And after decades in the game, Will Smith is finally on the verge of the thing that had kind of been hanging over his career for years, an Oscar win. Because even though he'd already conquered music, television, blockbuster movies, global fame, the Oscar still mattered to him. It represented legitimacy, respect, immortality in Hollywood history. And then, March 27th, 2022 happens, the 94th Academy Awards. Now, before this moment, the night is going great for Will Smith. He's smiling, celebrating, probably moments away from finally achieving one of the biggest accomplishments of his life. Then the comedian Chris Rock makes a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith. At first, Will Smith laughs, and then something changes. And what happens next becomes one of the most shocking moments in entertainment history. Will Smith rocks up on stage and slaps Chris Rock live on global television. Bro, the entire world stops. At first, people think it's fake, a skit, some weird scripted joke. Then the uncensored audio drops, and suddenly everybody realizes, oh nah, this is real. And instantly, decades of Will Smith's image collapse into one single moment. The lovable Fresh Prince, the charismatic movie star, the global role model, the kid from Philly, gone, or at least tainted forever. And here's the tragic thing about it. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. You can literally trace the emotional buildup, the pressure to be perfect, the public humiliation, the internet mockery, the family scrutiny, the years of emotional suppression, constantly trying to smile through pain. And then in one impulsive moment, everything erupts publicly. And then comes the part that makes the whole thing feel almost surreal. Because minutes later, Will Smith wins the Oscar. He wins, bro. The moment he'd worked towards for decades. And instead of it becoming one of the happiest nights of his life, it becomes one of the most uncomfortable, complicated, and controversial moments in Hollywood history. And honestly, that's what makes Will Smith's story so fascinating. Because it's not the story of somebody who is secretly evil, someone we should cancel, someone secretly fake. It's the story of a man who spent his whole life building an image so polished, so lovable, so perfect, that eventually the human being underneath it cracked under the pressure. And after the slap, everything changes. Will Smith's fighting for his life. Projects get paused. Public appearances get weird. And what's interesting is even after Will Smith publicly apologizes, resigns from the Academy, takes accountability, a lot of people still can't move on from the slap. To this day, every time Will Smith does something, every time he drops a project, in the comments, someone will bring up the slap. Will Smith tried to do what he's always done. He tried to give us some music. He tried to switch it up and give us some rap joints. And he got clowned for that as well. For some people, that moment completely overshadows everything. The music, the sitcoms, the box office records, the performances, the cultural impact. And honestly, that's kind of sad when you really think about it, because reducing a 40-year career down to one terrible moment feels unfair. It feels incomplete. Now in 2022, Will Smith returns with Emancipation. And this movie had a very difficult road, because no matter how serious or committed the performance was, the slap was still hanging over everything. People weren't just watching the movie, they were watching Will Smith after the slap. And that changes audience perception completely. But performance-wise, Will Smith smashed it. The role is brutal, physical, emotionally exhausting. You can tell he's trying to reconnect with audiences through raw, dramatic work again. Trying to remind people, I'm still an actor, I'm still an artist, I'm still talented. Slowly, over time, the temperature around Will Smith starts cooling down a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. And we got to remember, this man's cultural footprint is too massive to erase. You can't tell the story of 80s hip-hop, 90s sitcoms, blockbuster cinema, black Hollywood success, family entertainment, global movie stardom without talking about Will Smith. It's impossible. You've got to put respect on this man's name. Because now he's entering another interesting chapter. Because despite everything, Will Smith is still moving forward. There's already talks and development around a sequel to I Am Legend alongside Michael B. Jordan. There's more Bad Boys projects after the huge success of Bad Boys for Life. New action movies like Sugar Bandits. And honestly, that resilience is part of why I think Will Smith's story matters so much. Because whether you love the guy, feel disappointed by him, relate to him, or feel conflicted, the man never stopped trying. And that's really what this whole Give 'Em Their Flowers series is all about. I'm not trying to pretend people are perfect, because no one is. We're not trying to ignore mistakes, but we're acknowledging the full picture. Because when you really step back and look at Will Smith's career, the accomplishments are insane. Let's talk about it, man. One of the first globally accepted rap superstars. First rap Grammy win ever. Sitcom icon. Blockbuster legend, Oscar winner, producer, musician, trendsetter, one of the biggest movie stars in history. And he did it while constantly crossing over into spaces that Hollywood didn't always make easy for black entertainers to dominate. He made sci-fi cool, positivity cool, clean rap commercially powerful, emotional vulnerability mainstream, charisma into an art form. And whether people admit it or not, for millions of people around the world, Will Smith was part of their childhood, their family movie nights, their favorite songs, their favorite TV moments, their inspiration. And honestly, I think that's why the fall hit people so hard, because people expected perfection from him. Not humanity, but humans are messy, emotional, complicated, flawed, even the ones who spend their whole lives making us smile. And maybe that's the biggest lesson in Will Smith's story, that no amount of fame, money, success, adoration can fully protect somebody from the pressure or pain or being human. But even with all the controversy, all the jokes, all the mistakes, Will Smith's impact on entertainment is undeniable. That's why today we gotta give Will Smith his flowers. Because whether he's making us laugh as the Fresh Prince, saving the world from aliens, teaching us about perseverance and pursuit of happiness, making the whole planet get jiggy with it, and honestly, the world is more entertaining, more charismatic, and probably a little more optimistic because Will Smith is in it.